to the third episode of Human of STEMPeer, collaboration between the Addictive Brain and STEMPeers. With this series, you will see many members of STEMPeers talking about their lives, careers, inspiration, and aspiration. Our guest for today is Dr. Deepa Balasubramaniam. Deepa completed her master's in biological engineering at Virginia Tech 20 years ago, followed by a PhD in biological science at Purdue University. Post that, she worked as a postdoc at UCSD, studying protein-protein interaction. She then transitioned to industry as a postdoc with Merck and then as a research scientist at Eli Lilly in 2017 to study antigen interaction. Today, we will talk with Deepa about her career and transition journey, conflict resolution advices, women in STEM, and about STEM peers. Welcome and thank you, Deepa, for joining us today.
I'm very glad to be here. It's,
A pleasure.
it's been a long week, but I'm hoping with this will, it'll be a good way to wrap up a
Yes,
week of work.
definitely. So, I briefly mentioned about your PhD and postdoc, but can you tell us more about your work during these times?
Sure. So I started my PhD at Purdue in 2006, and that was about 5 years after I'd finished my bachelor's. So I took a little bit of time to figure out what I wanted to do my PhD in and what I wanted to pursue. I had certain, so I went to Purdue in 2006 and I was in the biological sciences department, but my focus was on actually structural biology and biophysics. So
Okay.
that's the subgroup I was in. And like many in this world, we have a family history of people affected by cancer. So there was definitely an interest in oncology or cancer based projects. So I started working at Purdue on the FA2 tyrosine receptor kinase pathway and its role in epithelial cancers. I worked on basically looking at the external domain, extracellular domains and structures, but about 3 years into my project, a different group published the structure I was working on.
Okay.
So at that point, we pivoted. I kind of pivoted because then the question was, do I want to learn X-ray crystallography and become a crystallographer, or do I want to just figure out the science and ask the next question that could help with the particular protein or the particular pathway? So my heart said go with, it doesn't matter what technique, answer scientific questions. So I ended up doing a lot of enzyme kinetics and mass spec based methods, developed mass spec based methods to follow phosphotyrosines and dephosphorylation, and ended up coming out with more of a biophysics and mass spec background
Uh-huh.
than a structural biology. I had a foundation in structural biology, but definitely did not spend all my time
Okay.
solving crystal structures. From that, I moved to UCSD as a postdoc.
Yeah.
And my main, I worked with Elizabeth Comabis in the University of, at UCSD in the biochemistry department. And I did a lot of, I slowly started working on my own project. I worked on a protein-protein interaction between a ubiquitin ligase, ASB9, and creatine kinase,
Yeah.
and did a lot of biophysics, SPR, ITC, enzyme kinetics again, and a few other techniques, and ended up learning how to do hydrogen deuterium exchange mass spec.
Okay.
In some ways, I was in the right place at the right time
Yeah.
because during my postdoc is when the first commercial instrumentation for HDX came out. There was a lot of interest and hype about the technique
Yeah.
because it was going to be amenable more to industry and applicable more widely than it was. So that kind of led me from being in that lab and kind of, I had the good luck of collaborating with Lilly Biotechnology Center when I was a postdoc at UCSD
Okay.
working on HDX. I got to meet a lot of good people in the HDX field via conferences, etc.
Yeah.
So, in some ways I was in the right place at the right time or in the right, um, decade.
Yes.
So from there, I actually transitioned to Merck as an industry postdoc, and worked on building their GPCR HDX
Mm-hmm.
platform.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or at least that was the aim of the project. But the good thing about that experience was I was able to show that I was more than just a HDX mass spectrometrist or a structural biologist.
Mm-hmm.
I was able to put my protein purification and molecular biology and biophysical characterization to use to purify GPCR, characterize it, and also work on HDX.
Mm-hmm.
From there, I again, timing worked out right around the time I was hunting for jobs 2 years into my Merck postdoc.
Yeah.
Um, I had a position opened up at the Lilly Biotechnology Center in the group I had collaborated with as a postdoc.
Yeah.
I interviewed for the position, and it was very exciting because I was basically being said I could come to HDXMS on large molecules and look at antigen antibody interactions, which
Yeah.
was still within my expertise, but in a different application, or looking at learning more about, because at Merck most of the targets were GPCR targets for small molecule. I was just focused in. I did have some exposure to large molecule, but
Yeah.
then I moved to Lilly, and now I this is pretty much my day job, and I
Okay.
love it.
That's good. So you have a very long history of staying in academics. So when and why did you decide to move out of academics?
I don't think there was a clear, invitation of any sort.
Yeah.
Uh, I did go into my postdoc thinking that I was going to try to become a professor. I
Yes.
worked on writing instrument grants with my professor. I worked on securing my own postdoctoral fellowship
Uh-huh.
um, at through the American Heart Association for the project I was working on. And somewhere during that process, we also had our first kid,
Yeah.
and um, life, as I mentioned in my introduction, right? I didn't have a good balance of work and life.
Yes.
And there were other factors that played in. So I kind of said, okay, where am I and what do I want to do? Going down the research parts wasn't something I was completely convinced by because of the challenges my peers were facing around me. So I had some friends who were trying to get the academic path,
Yeah.
and I decided maybe exploring industry. And as I said, as I worked through my postdoc, I also got exposure to industry, right? I had this collaboration with Eli Lilly. I also had a collaboration with a small company called Genelite here.
Mm-hmm.
They had SBIR that they had to evaluate, and they were looking for partners to evaluate. And it so happened that the person in that company knew my PI at that point, and I
Okay.
was one of the people working on the project. So
Okay.
I had a little bit of exposure to people in industry. I started talking to some of these people
Mhm.
and applied. I
Okay.
had a handful of, I also had exposure through the conferences I went to, because when you commercialize an instrument, there are conferences in which there are both industry and academic folks kind of coming together. I kept in touch with these people. Some of them are people I even talk to today,
Mm-hmm.
10 years later. So I think it was several different factors.
Yes.
But anyway, I applied. I had a handful of interviews. I went with Merck mainly because they were willing to do an O1 visa, which is what I would need.
Okay.
And I knew Merck was a good brand. I knew that I would learn a lot, and it would be a good pivot
Okay.
to my career.
That's a good strategy. So you mentioned some important points like relationship building in your statement is very important. Networking is important. So that is what led you to this position, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely. So how's doing a postdoc in industry different from academics?
So, at least for mine, right? There were some similarities and some differences.
Hmm.
Um, my academic postdoc, I was more focused on becoming an independent researcher. So I wanted to be involved in every piece of the project. I wanted to move it forward. So I went from identifying like which company had the cDNA, to PCRing, to cloning, to
Yeah.
expressing, coming up with strategies, and then designing the experiments to characterize it,
Yeah.
um, and all of that. But when I went to Merck, my main job was to build up HDXMS platform, and I
Okay.
had a big group of other people within different teams. A group that was really good at purification, a group that was really good at doing radio labeled assays to look at the ligand binding of the molecules that I would be looking at. A group that was extremely good at doing kinetic Beercore or SPR or ITC analysis,
Yes.
um, and at higher throughput too.
Mhm.
So I had all these people to collaborate, talk with. Instead of reinventing the wheel, I could learn, I could move some things, forward faster.
Yeah.
Um, and I had to focus on being an expert at one thing.
Yeah.
So for me, that was, and I mean, it did end up that I, did my own purifications and a little bit of characterization, but I volunteered to do that
Hmm.
because of the know-how and the interest.
Yeah.
There was no, at least initially, there was no expectation that I would be the person who did all of it.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think that's the biggest difference for me in industry. There's so, at least in big pharma, both at Merck and Lilly where I worked,
Hmm.
um, it happened naturally that, you had such a big company with so many different experts across. All you had to do was really ask and reach out.
Okay.
And
It worked out.
yeah.
Okay. So I see a very big difference between industry and academic postdoc. So let's talk about STEMpeers. What is STEMpeers for you, and what is your role at STEMpeers?
So recently, I've been voted president of the organization, and I hope I am able to live up to the,
Yes.
post. It comes, I'm very honored, and I'm, thrilled to be part of this journey in building us beyond the 5 years they've been successful in.
Yeah.
And but at the same time, it comes with a little bit of fear, right? Because it's a big group. It's a
Yes.
big responsibility, and it's not, you can't easily make decisions that pleases everybody or
Yeah.
works for everyone. So that's my position with STEMpeers today.
Hmm.
STEMpeers to me is, by the people for the people kind of organization.
Yeah.
um, and that's the part I really love about it, right?
Yeah.
If you have an idea, if you have an initiative that you want to try,
Yes.
we will support you as long as it's within the realms of science or support for
Hmm.
careers in science.
Hmm.
And that's what I love about it. I wasn't part of the founding team, or I didn't come on till about I actually got on to STEMpeers in 2017 when I was actually a postdoc at Merck.
Mark. Okay.
But through STEMpeers, I've made some really good friends,
Yes.
and I have some great mentors for my, personally. And um, for me, it's just about giving back,
Yeah.
right? I believe in good karma
Yeah.
very
That's very
deeply.
important. Yes.
And this is the little I can do. So, the biggest part I play is picking up the phone and calling people or talking to them and
Yeah.
trying to answer their questions. Or sometimes you just need to voice out all these
Yes.
confusions that are looming in your head
Yes.
and have somebody separate them for you.
Yeah. Definitely. Now,
So
so
I think
yes. Sorry.
that's my biggest role.
Okay. Congratulations on being elected as a president.
Thank you.
So, from the group, I have heard that you are a master at resolving conflicts. So, let's talk a little
Oh,
bit about
this,
conflict resolution.
I have no idea who gave, I was wondering where you got that from because I don't think I'm good at it.
But maybe we can talk about conflict resolution in general,
Um,
if
the
you want.
one thing I've, the
Yeah.
one thing, the few things I've realized is, and this is more in my journey, to understand self care,
Yeah.
and not get myself into this pit of, feeling if I've done the right thing in any given situation. It's, I have to be true to myself and I
Yeah.
have to ask the right questions. I cannot control how another person reacts to it.
Mhm.
So, um, So conflicts are common, especially with me, right? I have no. You've seen people at STEMpers say I'm no nonsense,
Hmm.
so I'm not very diplomatic. I just say it,
Yes.
and that works very well in certain situations. It
Okay.
doesn't work as well in certain situations.
Of course.
So for me, talking is the only way, right? You have to open up and ask, hey,
Yeah.
set up a one-on-one, talk to the person,
Hmm.
ask them what their expectation was. I'm still learning actually to agree to disagree,
Okay.
in my opinion,
That's good.
right? Because
Yeah.
it's important to learn how to agree to disagree
Yeah.
nicely, because conflicts are bound to happen, but you
Yeah.
kind of have to reflect as to what role you played, own up to it, I guess,
Yeah.
uh,
Any advices
and
on?
talk
Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
and just talk to the other person involved, because or let it go. That's the other thing,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the harder part.
Yes. Letting go is very
Letting anything go is very hard. So, and I'm no master at it.
hard. Okay. But do you have any advice on conflict management for people?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
Conflict management. Find people who understand your side of the story, right?
Yes.
This is again a recent revelation for me that when something happens, your story and the other person who's involved, you both will be in it, but you'll both see it very differently.
Hmm.
So there's no point in like fighting and justifying that you are right or they're right, because there is no it is not possible for both of you to look at a situation the same way when
Yeah.
it happened.
Yes.
So the way I have um, ha- ha- kind of navigated that is I found somebody who I think is neutral,
Hmm.
right? I can explain what happened.
Yeah.
They can listen to my story without judging me,
Yes.
and then give me pointers as to how I could have done better, or
Hmm.
say this is how you need to go proceed so that you can move forward.
Yeah. Okay. That's a good advice.
Yeah,
I'll keep
find
that.
mentors. Find
Yes.
mentors and supporters.
Yes. Definitely. Mentors are really important in life. So, you have a lot of things going around you. So, how do you keep a balance or check on your mental health every day or every week?
Uh, it, I'm learning this again. The things
Okay.
that have helped me in the recent past, especially over COVID times, right? Um, I try to take at least one walk, one talk. It's like one meeting as a walking meeting. So if there's a meeting in which I know there are not going to be slides, maybe it's a planning meeting for something, it's a strategy meeting.
Yeah.
I'll put it on my phone. I'll put my earphones on, and I will walk over that meeting.
Okay.
I've realized that I can listen to the meeting. I can constructively, give feedback in the meeting.
Yes.
It's okay if they hear you panting. The
Yes.
one other thing I've done is right behind me. You can't probably see it properly, but there's a stationary bike that my husband bought at some point, and I've conveniently taken it over.
Okay.
Um, you could, find whatever works. Like yesterday, there was a meeting in which there was a presentation. I had to follow the slides,
Yes.
but I found a way to prop the computer in front of the bike,
Yeah.
and it wasn't high speed, but I was just like biking for at least half that meeting.
Okay.
So that's how I get my you know I
Yeah.
guess my balance. So that helps. I'm lucky I live in San Diego. The ocean helps a lot, so every once in a while we'll just my
Yes.
kids love the water,
Yeah.
even on the coldest of days.
Yeah.
So there are times when we just drive on a Saturday to watch the sunset.
Yes. That's good.
One of the priority things I do, and this works sometimes, but I try not to do any uh, like calls for talking to people, etc., on weekends.
Okay.
My weekends are for me to figure out whatever I want to do
Yes.
or spend time with my kids. It doesn't matter. I don't have like, I won't say that I do a very good job of everything, but I try not to have too many extra things on the weekend. If I do have to catch up on work once in a while, I will.
Yes.
Um, but it's for like, just focusing back on what needs to be done for the kids and the family
Yes.
and my time.
Okay. Yeah, my time is something that we all should have. It's really
Yeah,
important.
I'm learning.
Yeah, I'm also in the learning process. I still don't have my time yet. So, do you have any advices or tips for people who don't find a work-life balance? Like, how can they manage their work-life balance?
um, Prioritize.
Hmm.
Um, and so these are little tricks. Again, I've learned from mentors.
Okay.
Prioritize is a word that's thrown around a lot, but it's hard to do,
Yeah.
right? I think one of the things we need to learn is how to set boundaries, right?
Mhm.
If you say you're going to shut down your computer at 5 o'clock,
It's-
you need to do it consistently. I mean, there will be 1 or 2 days when something blows over and you will have to do a little bit extra.
Yeah.
But you have to shut, especially when we work from home a lot, you have to shut down your computer, and you have to set your boundaries as to when you say no is no,
Yes.
um, when to prioritize. You know, I've recently started this. I've kind of color coded my calendar, and I
Okay.
have my time, even if it's just picking up the kids, making dinner and eating, right?
Mhm.
It's marked off on my calendar.
Okay.
And I try not to do anything else during that time as much as possible.
Hmm. That's important.
So uh, I have a really good friend who runs a big series of podcasts called, I could send the name in the chat.
Yeah.
And she's recently, and she's a mother who has her own business. She runs actually a company that talk, teaches bigger companies about emotional intelligence.
Hmm.
But she's taught me this term now, which I truly believe in. It's not about work life balance,
Yeah.
it's like work life flow. So you go from one thing to another, and then there are some days when you are more present or bigger in one avenue because there's a need. So your
Yeah.
child is sick, you're more of a mother that day. There are days when you have a deadline at work, you're more of a,
Work.
you're spending more work, being an employee or doing whatever um, your work and your
Yeah.
project needs.
Yeah.
So I'm slowly starting to believe more in
Yeah.
that you need to transition from one thing to another, and you need to have boundaries as to when to stop,
Yes.
instead of being constantly anxious about what you've not done.
Hmm. That's very important. Again, I would highlight this. But yeah, as you said, learning to say no is very important. And that brings to my next question about women in STEM.
Hmm.
In the society and colleagues or your friends do to empower women in STEM?
Can you repeat that question? For me at least, you kind of broke up.
Oh, okay. What can the society and colleagues do to empower women in STEM?
I think encouraging kids is one thing, and then understand. So the one of the things I've realized, again, these are all recent realizations over the last few years about with as my career, as I've learned more about people around me, I've kind of realized men typically don't even understand the struggles. They're
Yes.
not familiar with it. They don't understand it. So I think we need more men as allies who are willing to uh, not judge or say that shouldn't matter, but
Yes.
listen.
Yes.
Um, and yes, women do change once they have children, and we don't. I think that there are needs. I think being flexible, right? Employers being flexible, which I'm very lucky to have. Everywhere I've worked, I've
Yeah.
had immense support,
Hmm.
um, um, and being open to dialogue. I think those are the things. But keep encouraging children to
Oh,
explore.
yeah.
Um, I think those are the things that we really need to do, and being empathetic towards, um, and don't follow, right? Just because you've seen that some other person do it,
Yes.
don't even for fun put down somebody or categorize men and women. Don't do that.
Okay.
I
Thank you.
mean, because I probably did it too, right? You learn certain peer language.
Yeah.
You tend to do certain things in close groups,
Yes.
and it takes a lot of effort to not fit in and say something against it.
Hmm. it happens.
Yeah,
So
it happens to all of us. It might not be just in the case of men and women. I think it can happen to in many other situations, but it's hard to not. Um,
Mhm. Do it.
yep.
So, so my other question is to you is like, can you provide some tips or guidance for people who want to transition out of academics right now? This is the trend that I'm seeing, and this is what is going on. Like people want to move out of academics.
Learn where you want to go, right? Especially if you come down the PhD postdoc path. Um, you're not a um, your CV shouldn't focus just on techniques,
Yes.
right? Techniques are important. You might get hired based on a technique because everybody needs expertise and we need subject matter experts. But look at yourself as a scientist who can take complex problems, take it apart. Uh, and you don't have to be an expert. Sometimes you just need a help of another person to get an
Yeah.
answer to something. Uh, do your homework, right? Informational interviews, talking to people, conferences, whatever it is, find out about what you really want to do.
Yes.
Yes, making that single break as a scientist, as a bench scientist, which is probably what most of us think about,
Hmm.
maybe the path you want to go down, but there are other avenues. And there is conflict in this. I was recently in a panel where somebody else said, just take whatever, and figure it out as your career course. That's one way to do it. It's not wrong. But I think, having done a PhD and maybe even a postdoc,
Yeah.
you have enough, enough about what your likes and dislikes are and what your strengths are
Yeah.
as far as work goes.
Yeah.
So you can chase
What you
something. And if you're international, you have a PhD, you're very capable of, navigating visa laws, immigration laws, learn them,
okay.
learn them, and be prepared, right? Because many a times I've heard people say, oh, I don't, I have all the skills, I can't get a visa.
Hmm.
um, but what have you done about it, right? How have you presented that to a hiring manager or a company, or what homework have you done in that avenue?
Yeah, that's important.
So, and that's one of my biggest goals, because I kind of learned most of that stumbling through the process,
Okay.
um, in some ways. So I want others to be prepared, be ahead of the curve. So it showed. um, I was having a conversation with a mentor
Hmm.
earlier, right? And showing initiative, right, is actually rewarded in
Yes.
many places.
Yes.
So I think showing initiative, especially when it comes to immigration and understanding what support you need,
Yes.
is
Isn't
very important.
okay. Okay. So my last question to you is: apart from all of these, what do you like the most? What are your hobbies?
I so I used to learn dance as a kid. So music and dance is something I enjoy. Although I don't dance much anymore. My the latest thing is my kids and I turn on Taylor Swift songs really loud and sing
Okay.
along.
Okay.
That's been this week's high.
Uh,
Last week it was something else.
yeah.
I'm exploring music through their eyes. They're only 5 and 8, so most of it is it's just transitioning to away from rhymes or like simple songs.
Yes.
Uh, I listen to a lot of music. Uh, I read books, which
Okay.
is probably evident on STEMpeers because I used to have a book club or a book
Yes.
worm thing going on. I read books, walks, of course, now, more and more of it. I've realized how much I enjoy walking. Um, I'm not a big fan of, I don't exercise like go to the gym and lift weights. I don't do any of that, but I need to walk.
Okay.
Um, um, the other thing I do is I color. I don't have a book right in front of me, but again, these are things that I can do with my kids.
Okay. Yeah.
So at the same time, so this year for my birthday, I ordered myself some new coloring tools and adult coloring books, things that I thought I would enjoy and my kids would enjoy with me.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much for your time, Deepa, today. And we really enjoyed chatting with you. And we learned a lot from you. And I'm sure the audience would agree with us. And we wish you all the best with your new role as STEMPeers president.
Thank you.
Thank you.